If you saw something in the sky, something that did not look like a plane, did not look like a bird, was not a cloud, and then that thing was not one, not two, but 9, all in formation, moving at lightning speed, and so silent that even your own heartbeat felt louder than their sound, what would you call it? Was it some secret military experiment? Was it a trick of the light? Or was it the moment that made the world wonder for the first time that maybe we were never truly alone in the sky? Today's story takes us to the afternoon of June 24th, 1947, high above the snow-covered peaks of America, where an experienced pilot saw something so strange that it changed the language of the entire world and gave birth to a term that even today remains a symbol of mystery, fear, curiosity, and debate: flying saucers.
Welcome to Myth Xray. America in 1947, the world had just come out of the Second World War. People were fascinated by progress, but also deeply afraid. The sky was no longer just a place for birds and clouds. It had become a domain of warplanes, secret technology, and rising powers. And in that era, there was a man named Kenneth Arnold. He was no ordinary man. He was a successful businessman and an experienced private pilot. He had a strong reputation, a solid record, and he was not the kind of person who mistook every strange glimmer for a miracle. He had spent thousands of hours in the air and understood the language of the sky better than most. On June 24th, 1947, he was flying from Chehalis to Yakima in Washington state. It was supposed to be a routine trip, but there was something else on his mind. A few days earlier, a Marine Corps A-46 transport plane had crashed in the mountainous region. A reward had been offered for finding its wreckage. Arnold thought, why not take a look along the way? Maybe luck would be on his side. He was high in the sky in his small aircraft. Below him were mountains, snow-covered peaks, silent valleys, and above him, a clear, bright, washed blue sky. Everything was normal, and that is exactly what makes the next few moments so unsettling. Because often, the strangest events in history begin on the most ordinary days. It was afternoon. Arnold was flying at around 9,200 feet. He was near Mineral, Washington, and by now, he had almost given up hope of finding the crashed plane. Then, soothingly, a sharp flash of light struck his eyes. It was so sudden that, at first, he thought maybe the sun had reflected off another aircraft. That was not unusual. Such things can happen in the air. He immediately looked around. The sky was clear. There was one plane visible in the distance, but the flash had come from somewhere else. And then, one flash became two became several, and within moments Arnold saw that, to the north, near Mount Rainier, 9 bright objects were moving in formation. 9 together, in a pattern, silent, fast, unusual. He rubbed his eyes and looked again. Were they birds? No. Were they ordinary aircraft? It did not seem so. Was it just a trick of light? But light does not move like that. Those things were glinting, as if pieces of sunlight were sliding across metal, as if someone had released 9 shards of mirror into the sky, and all of them were moving together under some invisible command. From this point on, the story is no longer just strange. It becomes historic. According to Arnold, the objects did not look like ordinary aircraft. He could not see any tails on them. And that was one of the most shocking details for him, because an experienced pilot notices something as basic as that immediately. Later, he estimated their speed and said they were moving at an extraordinary rate of around 1,200 to 1,700 miles per hour, far faster than the known aircraft of that era. That is why this sighting created both amazement and controversy from the very beginning. Now picture this scene in your mind. You are alone, thousands of feet below you. The world stretches into the distance. In front of you are snow-covered mountains. In your ears, there is only the sound of your own aircraft. And then, suddenly, 9 things, moving across the sky in a way that fits no familiar rule. At that moment, Arnold may have felt what every human feels when encountering something the mind cannot immediately understand. Not fear at first, but astonishment, and after astonishment, unease, because often people are not afraid of what is dangerous. They are afraid of what they cannot explain. When Arnold later described what he had seen, he said something very important. He said the objects moved like a saucer skipping across water. That was a comparison. He was describing their motion. It did not necessarily mean that their shape was literally like a saucer. But the media took that statement as if the objects themselves were saucer-shaped. And then the newspapers launched a term, flying saucer, and from that moment, everything changed. One sighting, one interview, one misunderstanding or misquote, and suddenly, the world's imagination had a new image, flying saucers. The phrase sounded simple, but inside it was fear, mockery, sensation, and the strange power to turn one unusual event into a public obsession. Later, Arnold complained that the media had not understood him correctly, but by then, it was too late. The term had already been born, and once words enter the public imagination, they often become more powerful than reality itself. This question was asked from the very beginning, and it is still asked today. Did Kenneth Arnold make the whole story up? And this is where it gets interesting. He was not seen as some cheap attention seeker. He was a businessman, an experienced pilot, and people took him seriously at first because he had a good reputation. But despite his credibility, there was one problem. No one had a clear explanation for what he said he saw. Some people said it must have been a secret military aircraft. Others said it was probably a deception caused by light, snow, angles, distance, and mistaken speed estimates. And side note, it was something else. Something for which we did not yet have the words. And the truth is this: even today, there is no final, universally accepted explanation for the Kenneth Arnold sighting. We can talk about possibilities, but not certainty. After Kenneth Arnold's claim, a wave of UFO reports began to spread across America. People started looking at the sky with a new kind of suspicion. A light that had once been just a light might now be something else. A distant object that once would have been ignored could now become a headline. That is why many historians consider Kenneth Arnold's sighting to be the beginning of the modern UFO era. It may not have been the first strange sighting in history, but it was certainly one of the earliest to capture public attention on a national scale. Think about it. Sometimes, the most powerful thing in history is not a machine, not a war, not an explosion. Time. It is simply a strange flash, seen through the eyes of one man, and that alone can change the imagination of an entire century. Now imagine for a moment that you are sitting beside Kenneth Arnold in that cockpit. Beyond the glass in front of you, a shining snow-covered peak reflects the sun. The edges of the mountains glow in the afternoon light. You are tired from searching for a crashed plane. Your mind is running through ordinary calculations: fuel, distance, route. And then suddenly, a flash. You lift your head. Far away, something is shining. First one, then several, and then you realize these things are not just flashing. They are moving. Fast, in an unnatural formation. You try to reassure yourself. It must be some military aircraft. But then another question rises in your mind. Then, where is the tail? You estimate their speed. It comes out far beyond what makes sense. You try to follow their motion, but they seem to mock human intuition itself. And then, just as suddenly as they appeared, they move away and vanish from the scene. You are still flying your aircraft. The sky is the same. The mountains are the same. The day is the same. But you are no longer the same person, because you have seen something that you can describe in words, but cannot truly explain. The real power of the Kenneth Arnold case may not lie in those 9 objects themselves, but in the question they left behind for all of us. If a credible witness sees something that does not fit the known rules of the world, should we dismiss that testimony or preserve as an unresolved possibility? That is why this incident still lives on after so many years. Because some mysteries do not survive because they remain unsolved. They survive because they keep the words, "what if," alive inside the human mind. What if it really was some secret aircraft? What if it was a major perceptual illusion? What if Kenneth Arnold truly saw something that existed beyond the limits of our knowledge? And that what if is the fuel of UFO history? On that afternoon of June 24th, 1947, a pilot looked up at the sky and, for a few brief seconds, may have seen something that was not just a group of objects, but the beginning of decades of questions. That one incident gave newspapers a headline, gave the public a fascination, gave researchers a debate, and gave the world a term that is still tied to the unknown today: flying saucers. But perhaps the most important thing is not what Kenneth Arnold saw. Perhaps the real question is, how did we begin to look at the sky after that? Because sometimes the sky does not change. Only the human eye changes. And once the way we look changes, then every flash, every shadow, every silent movement can become a new story. So what do you think? What did Kenneth Arnold really see? A misunderstanding, a secret experiment, or a mystery that still lies beyond our understanding? Be sure to share your opinion in the comments. And if you enjoy real but deeply unsettling mysteries like this, then subscribe to the channel, because the next story may begin a new war between your belief and your doubt. This is Myth. Xray.